Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of House of Ways and Means. And today we are going to be talking about generational curses in Black marriages. Alright, so have you ever heard of a generational curse and what do you think about them?
I hear about them in the Bible, various places where God pronounced a generational curse on a family or in a lineage for doing, some specific thing that they weren't supposed to be doing. And I think these days, I'm sure, God still does talk to people, but I don't think he does anything without warning. So if you feel like you have been given or told that you have a generational curse for someone you did or one of your ancestors did, I don't know what to tell you and stuff, but I think we see generational curses, we call them a lot now, when, I think more commonly we call them, genetic predispositions that have kind of been passed down from family member to family member.
Okay. Do you think that generational curses exist in Black marriages?
Well, it depends on what you are defining as a generational curse, but they exist in relationships the way they exist in individuals, and that people may bring, whatever drama has been passed down to them through their family line into a relationship with another human being. So, they could be health issues, could be addiction issues, could be, personality issues. Any number of things that could affect the person will go on to affect the relationship.
I think one of the trying things about the generational curse is one, being able to identify it, like see if it does really exist, and then when you realize that it does exist, how do you then recover or disallow it from then being passed on to the next generation and the next and the next? Because when we think about families and our children and the things that we pass on to them, we want positive things. We want to create a legacy that's fruitful, that's healthy, and even sustainable as far as like wealth. When you think about being financial support and things of that nature, but a lot of the times we forget that there are these negative things like the genetic predispositions, and that could be something as simple as, well, not simple as, but it could be something as physical as like sickle cell, like passing that on. I know one of the things that we spoke about scoliosis and being concerned about our child having scoliosis if we were to have children. But there are other things that are more, damaging when we think about like addiction, people who are addicted and how it affects the family system, trauma, how trauma has affected the family system, sometimes being exposed to trauma, how we are attracted to recreating that trauma in our current environment because it's what we were taught and what we were exposed to dominantly growing up. So we tend to find comfort in negativity, and we kind of just repeat these same patterns and these same behaviors, and we allow it to affect the generations to come.
So, from your experience in marriage and family therapy, what are some ways that people can navigate kind of the generational curses that exist in their marriage, that exist in lives of individuals who are in relationships?
I think one of the first things that come to mind is people just being open. So all parties being open to it. Sometimes there may be a grandparent or a mother who may not be open to helping to resolve the issue. You want to ensure that you call this problem out, you recognize this for what it is, and your partner in life becomes your accountability partner when it comes to mediating those issues so that they don't return again. So that even when things happen that may trigger a certain response that could lead to certain behaviors and patterns, your accountability partner can see it, can recognize it, and can call it out, and then you both can work together to fix whatever the issue is.
But it sounds like it'll probably be easier if you kind of avoid getting into relationships as much as you can help with certain things, and that may require some difficult conversations up front. So what are some of the questions you need to be asking your potential partners, as opposed to just kind of going in with this happy, everything's going to be great experience kind of idea? Like what are the hard questions you need to be asking and really be taken seriously when it comes to when you're making a decision about, is this the type of person that is a good fit?
So it may be better if we discuss a particular example. So let's talk about addiction. You mentioned addiction.
Okay.
Let's say
alcohol.
Yeah.
Say you meet somebody, meet them at the club. You guys had a couple drinks, everything was flowing, y'all having a good time.
Right.
Well, so what happens before the third date? Say date 1 and date 2 both featured a lot of alcohol, and you're kind of suspicious. I mean, what is you may be trying to tiptoe around the situation and saying, well, we'll figure it out later. I mean, what do you need to really kind of say? What do you need to ask? How do you need to ask it? What's the appropriate way to go about making a determination? What is this exactly?
If I had an addiction issue in my family, one of the things that I would ask potential dater or potential mate is, what do you like to do for fun? What does a good time look like to you? Have them describe that. If there's drinking involved in every single scenario that he or she brings up, ding, 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 that should be a red flag. I would also ask, to change the scenery for dates. So as opposed to going to, the club on a weekend for a date, maybe you have dinner, see the person drinks there, or maybe you have a day date, where you have an activity, or you have, pizza or something like that, or whatever, or maybe you have Netflix and chill. I know it's quarantine, people are doing a lot of Netflix and chilling inside, and see if they're drinking in those settings as well. And if in every setting alcohol always is involved or is always talked about, or there's always some story revolving around alcohol, then for you to know that you're predisposed to this type of situation, it's best to just avoid it altogether. Because what could happen is emotions then become involved, and let's say you end up marrying this person and you have children. Your children are already genetically predisposed to addiction. And so if their dad or their mom is always drinking and always having alcohol at parties and things like that, which is fine if that's what people like to engage in, but you have to think about what your family, what your generational curse is, and if that's something that you guys are having a struggle with, then you wouldn't want your child exposed to that. But how can you then tell your spouse, oh, no alcohol here, this is what they've been doing all along? You can then change that person and change who they are and change their behaviors and their patterns just to accommodate your offspring, because they may not even truly fully understand how much addiction is an issue in your household or from your previous experience. So it just makes sense to ask those questions at the start. Asking about what they enjoy, asking about other activities, ask them to share what their most memorable experience was, of them having fun or whatever, and they'll tell you, what they've been up to.
All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. I know ideals about marriage are changing, in this current era we're in. Would you consider, I think we're probably from what would be considered more conservative, traditional families. I mean, would you consider a lack of marriage or singleness, long-term singleness, to be a generational curse, or can it be a generational curse?
Yes. I cringe when I say yes, because I think it's a little sad for me, because from my experience, I wouldn't wish singleness on someone unless it's a choice that they've made. something becomes a generational curse if it's something that you don't necessarily want, right? Now, if it's something that they don't want and it's something that they are going through and they have maybe all the women in their family are single or something, I think that's something that is very common, honestly. Even people who, I know people who have children but they don't have a partner or a spouse, or they're divorced, and it's just all the women in the family. You know that are like that. It's like a generational thing, something that is learned behavior when it comes to relationships with other people and commitment and keeping those relationships.
I mean, I asked that because I was at a wedding recently, and the family was pretty, on one side, was, you know, very traditional family. Husband and wife been married for a number of years, long time. They had kids. None of the kids were married, and these kids are all like approaching 40, and somehow the youngest gets married, and during the wedding a comment was made, and again, this is a traditional Christian family, and the comment was made that this was the breaking of, he didn't use the term generational curse, but I think he said stronghold, spiritual stronghold, where none of the kids were married. And again, you know, they're late 30s, early 40s, and the youngest one, who's, you know, late 30s, finally gets married. They seem to view it as being kind of like a breaking of a generational curse, where no one in their generation of the family had ever made it down the aisle.
How do you feel about, like, do you feel like it was a choice made? I don't know if you know them, or...
I don't think it was a choice. I mean, I think maybe in certain situations, certain things were prioritized over marriage along the way, but I think that all the kids had a desire, I guess, to be married. So I can see what you say. It's a choice, it's one thing, but you know, they seem to, it just hadn't happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunate, you know, when it's not a choice. I mean, how do you support people when they are in situations where they see themselves repeating generational curses? Like, is there anything as a friend, kind of looking in from the outside, is there anything that you can do to support that friend?
I mean, I think with anything like that, it's important, and you know, you may say, well, it's too late now, but I think the most important thing is to get them while they're young, and get access to someone and try to change their way of thinking when they're young. So that can be if you have continual poverty through generations, you have you know, kind of a legacy of poor academic or career achievement, a legacy of low self-esteem, a legacy of, you know, the sons hitting the streets at a young age rather than, you know, being, you know, productive members of society. So I think it's always important, the younger you can get to somebody, the younger you can get into their head and show them better, or at least show them the right path to, say, maybe treatment, depending on what it is. The earlier you can get on the right path, the better. So, I mean, that's why I think both of us, we make an effort to talk to young people not necessarily in our families, people we don't even necessarily know, but we seek out through different organizations and just ways to try to get to people when they're young. Because a lot of times you see that people will tell you they don't want to do something, but it's almost like it's too late, because it's like they can't, they're so, you know, it's so ingrained in them, they don't know how to do better. And it's like, even if they try, it just has such a hold on them. So, you know, you gotta get, I think, trying to get to them when they're young is really the best way.
But right now, there's no hope. That's what you sound like to say.
Pretty much.
Oh,
I'll go with you to rehab, or I don't know. Listen, once you get to a certain point, a guy like me, you gotta send him to a person like you. I can't do nothing for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of generational curses that, is a part of the black family or a part of black families in general. And I don't think it's just a black thing. I think generational curses exist in all the different types of races and cultures. I don't think anyone is like, oh, nope, you don't have a generational curse. I think there's always a little bit of something in any person. So what I would implore of you is to think about your family and think about what are some of the things that you are exposed to, that you may be pre-exposed to, and how it may be affecting your decision making today or even your family, because you want to kind of catch it where it is now so that you can fix it for your generation to come, so by way of children and grandchildren. So is there anything else you'd like to add?
I mean, just because you see it affecting everybody, you don't have to just roll with it. It doesn't have to be you. You can break the curse. You can be the one who breaks the chain, because it only takes one or maybe two generations to turn the fortunes of a whole family around.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're never hopeless.
Yeah, and you can do it. You can do it. Don't think that you can't. You can do it. So if you like this content, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And thank you so much for joining us in another episode of House of Ways and Means, series on Black Love.